Hello, welcome back. We're going to shift gears a little bit and have a conversation we haven't totally had yet. I'm here with my friend Stacy Crown, who is a faith-based life and business coach, and we met. Well, I feel like I followed you on Instagram for a while, but we met this last year when we both were on a panel together. And sometimes you just connect with someone and you can tell you just have similar things in line. And Stacy and I met for coffee, and we were totally the creeper girls in the coffee shop with tears in our eyes, talking about God and just talking about life. And I just thought it would be awesome to have her on here to have a conversation because one of the things that I admire about you is your boldness to walk in your faith and just the realness about it, which I think is missing and I think is so valuable for to have as a conversation and just have as someone in your life too. So
Yeah, I love that. I'm honored. I'm honored to serve your audience and your community. And I love that you are gearing things more faith-based because I think that in the health, and fitness and wellness, it's hard to honor God and figure out what, how you want to work your business. So I love that you're kind of interweaving both because I think that that's a lot more women need to like hear what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah.
But I'm Stacy. I'm a life and business coach. I haven't always been that. I am going to share my story in just a second, but I am a mom of three. My dog might bark. We might have to push pause. Okay. He's like over there sniffing, but I am a mom of three, 9, 5, and 3-year-old, married for 7 years, been together with him for 10. If you did the math, you probably could figure out that we got pregnant before we were married. With my faith, I've always been raised in the church. We went every Sunday. My mom went without my dad because he was working overtime every Sunday. He made like double the income. So obviously in the 90s, like I would make my husband work on Sundays if he made double the income too. So I always went to church with my mom. I have 2 sisters. I'm the middle child. And I honestly have always kind of been a holy roller. I've just always been a little bit more set apart. I remember back in the teen years, it was like Wednesdays were like youth group, and I loved it. Like I secretly loved it. I know it wasn't cool, and I wasn't the kid who like would go to parties and like drink and have all the things. I would go to the parties. I just wouldn't partake in that. So like I've always just been a little bit different than the way of the world. It's
Mhm.
just it's like the way that I'm wired. Um, and I will also say that like at a very young age, I dealt with a lot of loss. So I had to make a decision of like, where do all those people go? And so that really helped build my faith as well. But what really shaped me, I think, because I've always been walking the walk, right? Talking the talk, like trying to do good, trying to all these things, always a relationship with God. But I will say a big, huge turning point in my life was when me, the good girl, got pregnant on the third date um, with my now husband. And that is very humbling, right? I will also say, like, I did end up going through a phase of just like clubs and parties and drinking in college and having that fun part of your life, which then led me to meeting my husband on Match. And we hung out a few times and then we were pregnant. So it was like, I literally remember peeing on the stick being like, Jesus, take the wheel. If this is happening, then I literally remember March 29th. We conceived on January 11th. March 29th, I found out I was pregnant. So like that's 14 weeks of of being pregnant. Like I was in full second trimester and I didn't even know it. And I was on a girls trip. And just so you guys know, I haven't shared this publicly like on a podcast. I haven't even shared it on mine because I want to really have an honest conversation about this with my daughter.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't ever want her to feel like she was a mistake or anything like that. She just is part of our story and she's what brought us back together. Because we didn't talk for that 14 weeks. So I really truly believe in divine intervention. I think that every single person has a story. They have parts of their story that they have shame over, which I felt a lot of shame for a long time. Um, with just getting pregnant early. And you know what I also realized with that is that the shame wasn't because I didn't put the shame on me,
Yeah.
right? Like we always say, like, shame on me, whatever. Other people put that on me.
Yeah.
Their opinions of who I should be and how I should live. And you didn't grow up like this. And it was never my parents who said that. Um, but I will say, finding out I was pregnant, it was like a blur
Yeah.
because you live differently then. You're not just living for you. And I had to figure out, um, did I even like my baby daddy? Should we put it that way? But we came to the conclusion that we were gonna co-parent and we were gonna see where things went. And here we are, 10 years later. It has not been easy whatsoever. There's, the D word has come up multiple times, divorce. Um, we've had very, very honest conversations about that, but I think that that's what makes us continue to love each other because we can be honest with that. But we really did miss a part of our relationship of like that, like, most people are together for a while and like can talk about their future and can talk about,
Yeah.
where things are going, how they want to parent, what they want to name their kids, like what they desire and all the things. And so we were kind of stripped from that. So we have a different relationship and I love that about us. And I will also tell you, like, my husband is not like a firm believer. He's a little bit confused on what he believes. And a lot of people don't know that. Or I'm just telling you all of my secrets,
Filling it
but
out today.
yeah, but a lot of people, it's easier to do on your podcast than mine. It's so much easier, but a lot of people don't know that part of my story either, because a lot of people see a woman who's very, very strong in her faith and they automatically think that her husband is going to match that.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I don't. And I understand that what I do in my business with business coaching and having it be faith-based is I'm not only changing the woman who I'm working with, but I'm changing the generations. And
Mhm.
it's not me doing it. It's me. It's God using me as a vessel and my voice being able to change the generations, leaving her legacy, making sure that like those people are going to have spots in heaven. You know what I mean? And my husband doesn't know what he believes. And I'm praying that, he finds Jesus one day and can confidently say that, he's a believer. But, and I think when it comes down to it, he is, but, yeah, like he doesn't go to church with me. So it's like generational happening again. My mom never went to church with my dad. My husband doesn't come with me. And that doesn't stop me from, um, from doing what I need to do to grow in my faith. You know what I mean?
I love what you just said in that too, because as you said that, there's a few things that kind of resonated with me. One of the things we often hear, especially when we're talking about taking control of your health and the way that you treat your body and living in a way that God designed essentially from a nutritional lifestyle standpoint, is some of the things that we hear often from women is like, well, my husband's just not on board,
Mhm.
or other people in my life are not supportive of this, so they choose not to take action or invest in change or do something differently because of that. And it leads me sometimes too of like, you're holding on to the control, right? Or you're letting somebody else be in the control, and you're getting these nudges and pushes to do something and you're ignoring it because somebody else in your life is not aligned, versus like going vertical, right? And going to God
Yeah.
with it. And
And I want to touch on that because
yeah,
every big risky decision I've ever done, I haven't consulted with my husband.
yeah,
It's that awful. I don't want to condone that, because if you do have a relationship with your husband where you guys talk about everything and you are super honest, like we do have honest conversations, but I'll be honest with you, so the entrepreneur side of my story is that when I was 9 months pregnant, I joined an MLM company that was health and wellness, but really pushed a lot of weight loss products. It was called It Work, or it is called It Works. So a lot of people are still, with them. And so with that, I was like, I just don't want my boyfriend at the time to pay my bills,
yeah.
which, I mean, back in 2014, it was like $166 car payment that I was like, no one's going to hire me to teach, because I had just graduated from teaching the December before. And no, you can't walk into an interview, obviously, and be like, hi, I'm here for my job. I'm 9 months pregnant, right? And So what happened is I joined this MLM. I didn't tell him how much it cost. I didn't even want to share that with him. It was like $100 back in the day, but I didn't want to hear him give me anything about it because I knew I would. And I remember him saying, "Ugh, I give this 3 months." And I was there 8 years, went to the top, made all the money. I feel like I'm also the person that like, you tell me I can't, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah.
So he's always been my driving force to, um, make a lot of income, grow. And this is where I look at a lot of people's inner child, because a lot of times I have to ask myself, like, how was he raised? And it was just never good enough, never good enough, never good enough, right? And so it's like you finally, like, that's how he was raised. So obviously with my business, it was like, oh, that's not a big enough paycheck. And I'm not putting that on him because he is my biggest supporter, but it goes to show that the way that we're conditioned
Hmm.
is the way that we come into relationships. And for you to hear how we started in a relationship, we couldn't make those decisions ourselves because we were still walking it as the parents, or as the people our parents made us. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So we're
absolutely.
all walking around with these like inner child wounds, scars that I like to call, and sometimes those show.
Yeah.
Sometimes those show out. So with that being said, making it to the top of the company, I remember one time I like, and this has to do with my faith too, because God had really been pulling me away from working my business. And that was really uncomfortable because my husband works a 9 to 5. He loves it. He loves what he does, but it's not going to serve us, especially in this economy, let's be honest, with the things that we want in life.
Yeah.
Okay. The savings, retirement, like he puts in savings, retirement, HSA, like all the things. But like after that, it's like that's not going to pay the bills alone. And that's how a lot of families are. I mean, you're blessed in 2024 if you can be a stay-at-home mom confidently and still take the vacations, still drive the nice cars. Like I don't know many people who do.
No.
It's two working households, if not, one of those people having a side hustle or something like that. So I'm gonna let my dog out just a second. So with that being said, I remember one time I was sitting at my dining room table and we just got paid. It was the 15th of the month. And I was crying because my paycheck was my paycheck. And he had a whole team that I ran. My personal paycheck didn't hit 10K. And it was like $12 from it. So $9,988, right? And I had the nerve to sit at my kitchen table crying about it. And looking back, I'm like, and then my husband's paycheck was like $8,000 on top of it. Like I don't know many people who were in multi-level marketing who could continuously bring in that kind of income, right? So when I look back at where I have come from, the skills, the traits, the gifts that God placed on my heart way back then to coach women, to love women, to hold their hand through so many things, to help them understand that like there is more, right? Those things all came and stemmed from my It Works business. But in the journey of my It Works business, I really put money ahead of my faith. Everything I did was because I did it, because my team helped me do it. And that's why MLMs get a bad rap, because everything is the pyramid, right?
Yes.
Corporate America is a pyramid. It's so silly. Um, but it's true that like, you build your team, you duplicate, you teach your team, and then a lot of times you're the one making the really big paycheck.
Yeah.
And that was really stressful because it was something I had to keep up for a really long time. And God pulled me away from that. And this is another decision that I didn't tell my husband that I was making. At this point in my business, I was bringing in like a solid maybe like 15 to $20,000 a month. And I wrestled so hard with God. I was like, no, Lord, I do not need to leave this. I'm comfortable here. It's going okay. There was a lot of shifts in the corporate like team, and I was really uncomfortable because they were like, our CEO was stepping down and he was retiring. He had worked so long to like build this business. All these things were happening and I just was unsure of it. And so I really prayed to God. I was like, okay, in 6 months, if I don't feel a shift and a pull to continue, then I guess I'm gonna have to go. I don't know where I'm going, but I know that you're gonna lead me. And at that point, it was January, so 3 years ago, and he, for whatever reason, I started really diving into my daily devotion.
Mhm.
And I read Jesus Listens by Sarah Young, and it might change one day, but that's the binding is literally like breaking off of it. And I just remember wrestling with him for 6 months. And I swear to you, if I hadn't started diving into the Bible and the scripture and daily devotion and really clinging on to him and like letting him lead me and letting him hold me when like I was too weak to walk the walk, right? And I was still showing up on stages. I was still speaking. I was still leading my team on Zooms 5 nights a week. Like it was hustle mode. And I just couldn't do it any longer. And so June 22nd, what year is it? 2024. So 2022, I don't know, 3 years ago. No, I resigned in on June 22nd. And I didn't tell my husband because again, you know what his response was? You can't just listen to God and feel like he's gonna work it out. Like what the hell? And I sat right here in my little cubby of my office and I looked at him and I was like, you bet I will. Because at that point I was so confident, not in myself. Because when I started the journey with the MLM, I was so confident in myself. I was like, I can sell a hot dog to a vegan on a street and they'll fall in love with it. Literally, I was so confident in myself. I was making all the money. I was selling all the wraps. I was doing the skinny coffee, all the things, right? And I made it look really easy, which is why I grew so fast and why I duplicated so fast and why I made a lot of income. But then when the income became something I worshiped versus where I really needed to worship, which is God and
Yeah.
putting him first, um, I knew my husband wasn't going to understand that because I made it all look really easy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're running a business and a household and raising kids and trying to keep your marriage afloat, it's not easy, right? Like it's early mornings, late nights, you struggle to take care of yourself. You are dropping the ball in all the different areas. And that's really what my mission is now is to show women that you can juggle it all. And when you drop the ball, you can give yourself grace. Because for so many years, I went to bed guilty, feeling like I didn't do enough in this area. I didn't do enough here. And now it's like I go to bed and I'm like, God, thank you for another day.
Yeah.
Thank you for the blessings that you've sent my way. And my relationship with God is so much different than any other part of my childhood. Because I told you I was raised in the church. I went to youth group. I lived a little bit different, had my little party stage. But now my relationship with God is like, and I still struggle because when you live, if you've ever lived and made quite a bit of money doing what you did for a long time and you don't make that money anymore, it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's been sacrifice season I'm not gonna lie, for like the last 2 years for us because once that savings is gone, it's gone. And so my husband actually Saturday night had a meeting with his sister, who is a financial advisor for like billionaires, which we are not. And we're like thousandaires, you know what I mean? And he had a whole business meeting with her because he was like, okay, I'm taking over the whole finances because it's just stressed Stacy out for too long. And like, I'm just going to do it. And so I'm really proud of him because like me stepping back allows him to step into where God's calling him, even if he doesn't know that God's calling him there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said that right. You can do it all. I think what you said though, right? But you can't do it alone is the most
Hmm.
important piece. And one of the questions I'm sure I get it all the time as a business owner is like, well, how do you balance everything? I'm like, I don't. There is zero balance happening over here. There is a lot of prioritization, and there are days that some things get more attention than other things. But I know that I cannot do this alone. And the times that I have really made sure that God is like focus in my business and where I'm going for direction and those things are the things that the quote unquote balance really feels like it's coming into play, right?
Yeah.
Um, because you feel like you have the support there, you have the direction, you have the guidance there. And I think one of the hardest things, like one of the best things that you did too, is realize that you can't be in control of it all.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's the hardest thing. Literally, I wrote down in my journal today because every day, this is what my morning routine looks like. And I'm actually, I don't know if you saw, but I'm doing a Holy Girl 40
yeah,
for Lent, which is so exciting. Because I really want to show women how to step into that, how to start putting God and prioritizing God. Because I think it's something that we all want to do. We just don't know how. And so one thing that I do is I write in my journal, say, and I just put today I feel. And I recognize right there how I feel. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm grateful. Some days I'm tired. Some days I'm exhausted. Some days I'm whatever it might be. But being able to pour that out to God, and then it's honestly like a diary. Like if my husband picked it up, he'd be like, I didn't know you felt like this. You know what I mean? But I keep it out because I'm like, if he ever wants to look, like he'll just see all the days, right? Um, or my daughter or whatever. And I look at it as like a little legacy. Like when I'm gone, my kids will at least know that like I talk to God every single day and they'll have evidence of it. I get that from my mom because she has tons of journals throughout the year. And I've always loved writing. But my point in saying that is when I can turn to him to surrender, and
yeah,
I wrote that today, I was like, I'm going to have to continue surrendering this forever. Like, it's not like surrender, you surrender it once,
yeah,
right? And it's like done. You're done. Okay, God, like take this from me. No, like you might have to go to God every single day for a really long time until you feel freed from that. And sometimes on the opposite, like some people do things and immediately they feel freed just once. Like, but for me, with the storm I'm walking through, it's like I'm going to have to go to him every single day
yeah.
until I feel better. You know what I mean?
Well, and one of the things that we talked about in the beginning too is a lot of times people will say no because they'll leave it on their husband. One of the things that you did was you were not waiting for your husband to be your savior, right? You were not,
No.
because that's not his role and it's not his position. And a lot of times I think we can forget that other people in our life are not there to be our savior.
Well, and I think a lot of people have the priorities wrong
Yeah,
in what they prioritize because for me, it's always been God
yeah,
because I know he's never going to leave me.
yeah,
And then it's been my husband, and then it's my children. For my husband, for a really long time, it's been the kids, then me,
yeah,
and like God's like number 15, right?
yeah,
But, and here's the thing too, is like I can't change him.
right.
I can only change me. And that's why everything I do is called She Is Called, because I truly think that each person that I know who's going to hear this, and this is going to be, or I don't know if you do YouTube or see it or whatever, but it's like each person who hears this, who come into the airwaves, God is calling you to something.
Hmm.
And it's either like a light whisper or it become, and he'll whisper it until like he shouts it. And you can either step into that with blind faith, like I did. Like I literally resigned from a lot of money a month and a lot of stress and a lot of hustle and a lot of all the things. Like so many blessings came from that business, but I resigned not even knowing what I was going to do next.
Yeah,
And then I waited patiently and confidently. And I'm saying that like my faith grew so much in those 6 months because I had to cling to him. I mean, like cling, like stage 5 clinger, like when your toddler just like won't leave you alone, right? God was like, can you give me a break? Right. And it's like, he wants us to do those things. He
yeah,
doesn't want us to glorify ourselves when we hit accomplishments. He wants us to be like, look at you, God. He wants us to dream so big that when they happen, we have no choice to be like, wow, God,
yeah,
I can't believe you did that. I want my life. I want to look back on my life and be like, and I do look back on my life because I can confidently say I see him in so many different seasons of my life. Every single day I see him, but it's like, I want to dream so big and I want to set such big goals because Ephesians 3:20 tells us only in his power can he deliver to us more than we ask, think, or imagine. And I want to live an Ephesians 3:20 life because I want to look back and say, wow, God, you did that. You did that, not me. maybe I was the one to reap the benefits. Maybe I was the one to, become the size 10 that I want to come or whatever it is, right? Or make the paychecks that I want to make again. I want to look back on my life and say, wow, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah. Those nudges you get are huge. And that's the nudge I had last year, right? To transition our business into more of a faith focused business because it's a conversation that's missing a lot, but also you don't always know why those nudges are there. I didn't totally understand why I was getting those nudges, and I'm still working through layers and
Yeah.
pieces of that. And I think
And
sometimes
you're going to find that some people leave you for that.
100%, and we think it's going to be an
Yeah.
easy path, and it's not
Well,
easy.
and I will say for 8 years of my life of being an entrepreneur, I was always taught, don't say that you like ketchup because the mustard people aren't going to like it.
Yeah.
Don't say you like dogs because the cat people aren't going to like it. I'm not saying that I go on and I'm like, Trump or Biden or, Jesus or Satan or anything. Like I don't, my social media is not that. But I will say that like there is a line in the sand
Yeah.
and I will always stand with God. And I think that's something that's very hard to find right now, especially in the coaching world, because there isn't a lot of coaches that are willing to stand up and say, yeah, I believe in God, or have all of their, things. But I will tell you that like, um, I just feel so strongly for what I do. And it makes me really joyful to see people come to me when they need prayers or come to me when they, have a question. Whether I know it or not, I'm going to help, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like you're going to draw people away, but you're like people are going to leave you, but also people are going to be drawn to you because you're willing to put your foot out like Peter did on the boat, right? Like God's going to catch you.
You're gonna live, but I always say like you're gonna live with a you're either going to live with it outwardly or you're going to live with it inwardly, right? Because if
Mhm.
you're not living it outwardly, then internally, I often see sometimes that like I've had anxiety the last couple of days. I know why my anxiety is there. I haven't been in my word as much as I should be. I always feel that come up when I haven't been. I always say anxiety is a sign that you're living out of alignment somewhere, and you need to kind of evaluate what is not in alignment, right? And that I need to kind of assess like needs to be shifted or changed in my life, because if I'm not doing it outwardly, I'm feeling it inwardly in my body. Something feels out of alignment somewhere, and that needs to be assessed. So it's not even sometimes, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be hardships that you're going to deal with. You're going to deal with those either way. It's just a matter of how you're dealing with them. You're either going to deal with it physically, manifesting in your body in some way, shape, or form, whether it's coming out in anxieties or sicknesses or something along those lines, or you're going to deal with it outwardly in some way.
Yeah. I think too that we have to understand that like God doesn't want us to live anxious lives.
No.
He doesn't call us into fear. He doesn't call us into worry. He doesn't call us into doubts. And so the more that you can become so self-aware on who you're listening to.
Yeah.
Are you going to listen to the whispers of the enemy that happen in your head or the shouts from God that you literally can open up a whole book to be reminded about how good he is and how amazing he is, how much he loves you? I mean, you don't even have to open the Bible. You could put on some worship music.
Yeah.
And that's been something I've been practicing too, is just every single day. Because I know that, like so many of you listening, you're a mom, you run a business, you live a life, you work from home, you're 9 to 5, like the whole thing. And so it's really hard to still yourself and just let God in. There's so many times that I'm like sitting, trying to do my devotional, trying to answer somebody on my phone. And it's like, no, I just have to put it down. So one thing that I've really been practicing just to let myself be is to just practice sitting in one song with my headphones on. I find a really good worship song that really just hits me right then. And I just close my eyes and I breathe.
Yeah.
Because if I can't give God 3 minutes, or like elevation worship, 9-minute song. If I can't do that, then I'm not worthy of it. You know what I mean? Like I know that's very worldly of me to say, but it's like if you want to start digging into the word, if you want to start digging into your faith, if you want to even do it for you personally to then one day be able to do it online, like I do it. And there's people who do it way better than I do. Like all the time I'm thinking, wow, I must be just such a baby Christian. because there's people doing it so much better and so much louder and so they know so much more, right?
Yeah.
And that's I think something I'm come into is being humble.
Yeah.
Is, for a really long time it was like people would come to me because I knew everything about my business and I knew how to teach other people because I'm a teacher by nature. But it's very humbling to leave something that you've known for the last, almost decade, to leave for you don't even know where, to
Yeah.
be the worst one in the room
Yeah.
and to let God take the lead and like humble yourself enough to do that. It was hard. And that might be something that you're facing, right now in your life, like wherever, whoever's listening, it's like, where can you humble yourself? Where can you kind of bow down and be like, take the lead?
But also, he's equipping you. I had a conversation with a friend the other day because I'm doing a talk in a women's ministry in April. And I was like, she's like, how are you feeling about it? I was like, I'm terrified. I was like, I feel like I know God's presence in my life, right? But like I've never been someone who can just quote anything, right? I was like, the people can
Yeah.
just quote a movie and say, I was like,
Yeah.
I watched it 50 times. I still couldn't quote stuff. I was like, I've
Yeah.
read the Bible, still can't quote it. And I was like,
Yeah.
I struggle with it. And she's like, you're focusing on the wrong thing. She's like, he's already equipping you with everything that you need. She's like, maybe the people that need to hear you are the people that need to hear someone who can't be a
Yeah.
perfect Christian, right? And
Yeah.
quote everything. And
Right.
that sometimes when I look back on the different stages of my life where I know God was present and I can see his work in those moments, they were some of the worst moments of my life that I
Mm.
could see him. When my dad was passing away, I know God was there. When I met my husband, I know that God was there, right? I know that all those little steps of things that were horrific moments of my life, God was there through those. And he was equipping me for the next thing that was coming, right? Even what I physically have gone through in my body, I it was awful. It's not fun, but God was equipping me for the next stage and being able to help people, right? So what if instead of looking at it in a negative way, we looked at it like, what am I being called for? Like, what's the next step and what am I need to learn for? Because he's trying to equip me for the next thing,
Yeah.
right?
And I think that I have such a testimony for that too, because it's like when I left my It Works business, it was like, God, I know that you have brought me here. I
Yeah.
know that you've helped me meet all of these wonderful people throughout my whole entire 8 years of business, between the people on my team, my, sideline sisters, my customers, like all these things, like just growing my network. I was like, I'm willing to use the platform that you gave me to now glorify you.
Yeah.
Show me the way. Like it was a complete, like I always say, it's like Abraham in the wilderness when he's like, pack your bags. I'm
Yep.
taking you to the promised land. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Like that's how I felt. But I can confidently say, I'm looking back on 2 years of my career, but 10 years of truly being like, what the heck's going to happen with getting pregnant with my daughter? And it's just like, wow, because I gave him the control back right then, because I said, Jesus, literally physically take the wheel. If this is a pregnancy test that has positive, and I didn't do one of the like line ones, I did like pregnant, not pregnant. I didn't even, it was awful. It was awful in the moment, but like I look back and I'm like, wow, that was so, oh, that was such an amazing pivotal moment in my life. And it could have gone so much differently. And I also look at my husband and I know I've been talking about him a lot. I don't usually talk about him this much, which is so funny. But it's like I also look at my husband and I'm like, wow, look at us. Like, look at us, like the Paul Rudd meme where it's like, look at us. But literally, like, because we are a very small percent of people who get pregnant early, very early on or unexpectedly, and then stay together.
Yeah.
And that's the foundation of our marriage. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't our choice. I mean, it was our choice, but like, it brought us back together and it's like that is God.
Yeah.
Like to have one tiny little act that plants a seed that then two people can actually make the choice to make it work. It blows my mind. It
Yeah.
blows my mind every
Yeah.
single time.
Yeah, absolutely. We sometimes will look at we only thank God for the good things, right? And obviously a daughter is an amazing thing, but we sometimes only thank God when things are going well, and we forget that when things are not going great, or we've been thrown a pivot in our life, right? And a transition that we are not ready for, that we actually should be thanking God because he's
Well, and like scripture literally tells you, like, you should find joy in every circumstance. Like,
yeah,
if you are putting God first, you should have a peace that transcends no thing, like, nothing can get in the way of that. And it's like, that was what my devotion was today. It was all about how, like, our peace comes from the Lord. It doesn't come from money. It doesn't come from a size. It doesn't come from a scale. It
yeah,
doesn't come from this, that, and the other. And I always, you'll like this. I always say, there's two things I'll never do in the morning to find my worth, and it's jump on the scale or check my bank account because they're just numbers and
yes,
they're worldly.
yes,
Like, they're so
absolutely,
world. Like, today I got on the scale. Okay, mind you, my husband has lost 22 pounds this in the last 43 days.
yeah,
Okay. 22 pounds. He's miserable. He's doing it. He's feeling really good, but he's just so miserable. He's not doing it in a good way, but not the Brooke way. But I will say, I got on the scale today and I was like, I feel skinny. I'm going to get on the scale. And I get on the scale and it's up. And then immediately I had a conversation with myself and I was like, you can either let that number rule your day, or you can say, no, I'm going to continue working out. I'm going to continue tracking everything that I have been. And I'm going to continue doing the things that I know are good for me. And like, that is the difference between letting the world rule me and finding my identity in Christ. You know what I
100%.
mean?
It's interesting you just said that because I've said this to someone before. Of if you're feeling really good about yourself and then stepping on the scale changes your opinion of yourself,
Mhm.
that is the sign, right? That is the
And
thing.
that's like your worth. Like, what is your worth coming from?
Yes, 100%. And we're human. We are going to fall victim to, right? The world, right? And the things of the
Mhm.
world sometimes. But that is the reason you should be prioritizing and spending time with God and going vertical and spending time in the word, right? And I think that that's the thing that we forget. We often encourage with our clients of like, what restorative time are you doing in the week? And they'll be like stressed out to the max, and they're like, restorative time, I don't have time for restorative time. And I'm like, that's literally the reason you need the restorative time, right? Because
Right, it's stressed out right now.
yes, Jesus took the time to be restorative, so if he could find the time, so can you, right? But
Yeah,
also,
they always say that he like snuck off to the mountains to pray. It's like he
yes,
took time,
yeah,
and we need to too. And I fall victim to that too. But you know, and here's the other thing. It's like, just do your best. Put God
yes,
first the best you can, and just know that like, my journey of what all has happened in my life, this is what, I want everyone listening to understand, is like, your story has so much power in it. The things that you've been through, the trauma that you've lived through, the addictions that you've broken, the generational curses that you have, and you are walking into change. Every single part of that is because God has placed that. Every single thing that happens to you every single day is like a dot on the timeline of your life.
yep,
And it's meant to help you. It's not meant to hurt you. You know, it's he's going to turn all of those things for your good. Like, I am literally Romans 8:28 when I think about it. Like, and I'm sorry, I'm like pouring out all the things that you said that like you struggle with. But I will
no, I
say,
love it, yes,
the reason why I'm like that is because I've been in the word for 3 years. I wake up and I put my armor on. If I don't wake up and put my armor on, and put my armor on means like listen to worship music, read my Bible, which like, I don't just read a chapter, you guys. I don't have time for that. I literally read my devotion, and then there's like 3 or 4 devotions at the bottom, and I go in and I read those. And if I get caught up in one, I get caught up. But if I don't have time, like, that feels good for me, right? But if I don't put my armor on every single day, it allows for the enemy to come in. He immediately sees a gap.
yep,
He immediately sees, and some of us aren't doing that. And we're wondering why we're freaking out on our kids to get in the car. I literally yelled at my 5-year-old today to get in the car. I was like, put your shoes on, put your coat on, and get your butt in the car. And then I looked down and I was like, I literally have a Love Like Jesus shirt on. Like, talk about conviction. Like immediately I was like, oh boy, that puts you in your place. I'm not saying I'm perfect.
yeah,
I'm saying I'm perfectly imperfect, knowing that my identity is in Christ, and that every single day I wake up with him. And every single night I go to bed with him in the back of my mind. I'm praying all day long. Like, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm saying that like every single little bitty step that you take is going to help you grow in your faith. And everything you've been through is helping you to pivot you and just take you on a different trajectory. And you have the choice to either go the world's way and you have the choice to either go, God's way. And that's just the choice that we all have
I
in
love
our mind.
And I
Like,
love that you said it's the compounding impact, right, of all those things put together because you don't get to just read your Bible and tomorrow you make wake up a millionaire and like everything is healed and there's no, it's small little habits and behaviors, but um I always tell people I'm like your my pain had a purpose, right? And everyone's story has a purpose. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can do and that the enemy doesn't want you to do, right? Is to share pieces of your story that you may be feeling shame in or you may be feeling guilt in because those pieces of your story are something that God wants you to share, right? And
100%. Like it was not, I would have never been able to share those things 10 years ago because I held on to them for so long and so tightly. But it's like, I also know now, looking back, that my story is for his glory. And so it might, I know that's so cliche to say, but it really is. Like, I look at my story and I'm like, thank you, God. Like, not everybody has my story. We live in a damn dome home. Like, we live in a dome home. Like, we are different, right? Like, we are just different. We're not traditional people. And as for my kids, it's like they're not normal either. Like, not, I'm not saying they're not normal. I'm just saying like they are little guiding lights for their friends too. And I want them to grow up and be different. I want them to be able to be like, they're doing this, but I'm going to do this. To be a leader instead of a follower and to be able to, lead people to Christ, but not do it in like, you should believe in Jesus, but just like people be around them and know that they're different. That's how I always was. It's how I always am. Right. And it's like, and for my husband not believing or not, you know, proclaiming that he believes yet or anything like that, it's like, I know I'm in his life to
yeah,
help because he doesn't do it yet.
yeah,
And that's okay.
yeah,
That's okay. Some days it's really hard. Some day that's my cross, some days it's the cross that I bear.
yeah.
It's not easy to be with someone who isn't aligned on the same level of your faith. But I also know that each one of us has a different spiritual walk and different journey. And that's what makes us great.
And I think one of the toughest pieces in that too is sometimes we always want the answer, right? Like, well, when is this going to change and when will? And I think the hardest part sometimes is the answer is not yours, right? You don't get to.
No. And I think sometimes people get caught up that like, I can only go to God when things are good, or I can only go to God when I'm happy. I can only go to God when like this, that, and the other. But it's like, why can't you go to God when you're angry with him?
Yeah.
You don't understand.
Yes.
Like you have full permission. You have a, constant speed dial to heaven. All you have to do is open your mouth or think the thoughts. Every single thing that you have in your head, like my kids will be like, Mom, are you talking to Jesus again? And I'm just like, yes, I am. Praying for patience again, right? Which just kicks you in your foot every time. But literally, like I want every single person who's listening to understand that like prayer doesn't have to be hard. It can literally just be a conversation with God, and you're allowed to feel all the feelings. He
Yeah.
already knows how you feel. He already knows that you might be angry about something, or super grateful, or super tired, or super whatever. He's going to put the people in your life that you need, like Brooke, like me, like different coaches and different things that you might need, different financial advisors, or whoever it might be, to help you out of those ruts. You just have to listen to the nudge that you are having. You know what I mean? And you really just have to talk to him no matter how you feel.
And especially, I always think about it like this. I have kids. I don't want my kids to feel like they can only come to me when they've done something good, right? And they
Oh,
they
100%.
are ready to share something that I would be proud of. That's amazing too, and I love hearing those things. But one of the moments that I have like the most tender heart for my daughter is when she came to me upset saying like I have something to say and was like yelling at me and saying like I'm mad at you because you did this, and I like immediately was like, oh my gosh, like I'm so sorry and can I be here, right? And that's what I'm there for, and that's what God is. And when I had that moment with her, I was like, oh my gosh, like that is what God is there for me too, right? He has the same feelings towards me as I had towards my daughter when she did that with me, right?
Well,
Um,
and it reminds me too, like we tell our kids like, don't touch the stove when it's hot. We warn them, right? Like how many times does God warn us about certain things in life? Whether it's who you're dating or where you're hanging out on Fridays or what you're putting in your bodies or all these things, right? You can see all these warning red flags all over. And then you touch the stove and you get burnt. It's like, as a parent, he doesn't warn us on those things because he doesn't love us. He literally does it because he does love us. And
yeah,
even if we do the thing that he tells us not to, he's going to love us anyways. And
yeah,
that's the God that we serve. That's the God that he is, and that's a special thing. I feel really awful for people who don't have a relationship with Christ because you live so much more at peace. And I remember there was a conversation with my husband and I where something really, traumatic happened. And he just looked at me and he's like, you think you're so much better than me. And I said, I don't think I'm better than you. I said, I think I'm better off because I have peace and I have joy that transcends any circumstance.
yeah,
And I just know that God is not doing this to us. It truly is going to be for those people that just went through that, and it's going to be turned for good. And and you know what? I look back at the situation that we were really sad about, and the situation has completely changed.
yeah,
And God is working for their good. And it's just one of those things where it's like you live differently when you know God.
yeah.
And I really hope that every single person, if you have any questions, if you struggle with any of this, like my inbox is always open. I know Brooks is too, but it's like these are um these are the conversations I'm always having. And the conversation is different when you're surrounded by women who are faith like, which is why I also love building, a sisterhood of women who can do that together because it's different.
Yeah. Having a friend that you can just text and say, I'm struggling with this. Can you pray for me? Right. And you know that that person is going to come with zero judgment and just complete compassion for where you're at.
Yeah. Yep.
And how they can show up to serve you. If it is just a prayer or support you in some way, shape, or form, it's just a different relationship.
That's my friend Lane. I always be like, I need a prayer. And she's like, tell me what you're going through. And then she'll just send me a voice message right after.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the best thing ever.
Okay, so you work with women now in your world with life and business coaching, and obviously centered with God at the core. Talk to me and for everybody listening a little bit about how you do that and how they can get in touch with you.
So a few different ways that I serve women is right now I don't have any one-on-one spots open just because I'm maxed out. But outside of the one-on-one coaching, I have it's called the Inner Circle membership. It's on Facebook. We get together twice on Zoom a month. We also run different challenges and Bible studies. We're starting one called Holy Girl 40 on the 20th. So it's 40 days of putting God first. Um, That'll be happening in the Inner Circle membership. Outside of that, if you just want to listen to more of what I bring to the table, and like I said, I'm real and I'm raw, and I will be emotional about different things. My podcast is called She Is Called, as well as I really, really love serving women in person. I love hugging different people. I love hearing. And so I do retreats. So I run and host retreats, and I have I have two coming up in May in Michigan. Um, One is for business women, so it's going to be business focused and faith based, as well as one that is for women. So women who are made for more. Maybe you don't know, you know, where you're going, what you're doing, or maybe you just need a weekend away from your family and you just need some you time to really connect with God and be able to quiet himself. But again, have that community of women. And Brooke's actually going to be there with us, which is so exciting. So if you want to come hang out with me and Brooke for the weekend, it's the end of May, or it's, yeah, end of May. But I currently have those things running. Other than that, I mean, you guys are welcome to follow me on Instagram at the Stacy Crown. Check out my website, thestacycrown.co. And yeah, my inbox is always open if you need prayers, if you have any questions, um, if you're curious when I'm opening up my one-on-one, all of those things. So
Love it.
yeah, it's
Thank
been
you
a
for
pleasure.
being here. I'll share all
Yeah.
those things in the show notes. So if you're driving, don't try to do it right
Yeah.
now. It won't be helpful for you later.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. It's always good to chat with you.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.